Every word you have spoken today cost you something, not figuratively, literally. Every sentence you offered when silence would have served you better was a piece of your position handed to the room for free. Every opinion you volunteered before the room revealed its own was a card laid face up on a table where everyone else was still holding theirs. Every explanation you gave when no explanation was required was a door opened into the specific part of your reasoning that someone else can now walk through and use against you when the moment is right. You have been speaking your way out of the power you should have been accumulating. And nobody has told you clearly enough that the speaking is the leak. Not the situations, not the people, not the environments you navigate. The speaking, the chronic, reflexive, socially trained habit of filling silence with sound, because silence feels like absence and sound feels like presence. That instinct has been draining you every single day. In every significant room you walk into. Machiavelli understood this with the precision of a man who had spent 15 years listening in rooms where the men who spoke most were the men who fell first. He watched brilliant advisors reveal their entire strategic position in a single conversation because the conversation felt collaborative and the sharing felt safe. He watched capable diplomats hand their opponents the exact information needed to outmaneuver them because the reflex to respond was faster than the discipline to hold. And he wrote something that should be carved into the wall of every room where significant decisions are made. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Very few experience what you actually are. That sentence is not about deception. It is about selection. It is about choosing what the room receives from you rather than letting the room take whatever your reflexes are willing to give. Here is what Machiavelli would say to you right now if he could sit across from you and speak directly. He would say, "The man who cannot hold his tongue cannot hold his position." That is not a metaphor. That is the documented observation of someone who watched men lose their positions, their alliances, their reputations, and their influence. Not through bad decisions, but through the bad habit of giving the room more information than the room needed to receive. The decisions were sound. The speaking undid them. The strategy was effective. The sharing undermined it. The intelligence was genuine. The display of the intelligence neutralized it. Every one of those losses was a speaking loss, not a thinking loss, not a capability loss, a speaking loss. And speaking losses are the most preventable losses in any human environment because they require nothing more than the discipline to hold what the reflex wants to release. This video gives you 7 laws for the 3-phase discipline that Machiavelli's entire career was built on. Speak less, not as a performance of mystery, but as the genuine conservation of your most valuable resource. Observe more, not passively, but with the active, trained, deliberately sharpened attention that turns every room into an intelligence-gathering operation. Control everything, not through force, but through the specific, quiet, structurally unassailable advantage that the person who has seen more and said less holds over every other person in the room. Before I start, the last law in this video is the one that turns observation into actual control. Without it, the silence and the watching produce nothing actionable. Stay to the end. If you are ready to stop spending your words and start investing them, comment "I speak less" starting now. Like this video because every like puts it in front of someone who is still giving the room everything for free. Subscribe and hit the notification bell. And drop your location and the time right now. This community is real, and right now it matters who is here. Law 1. Every word you speak is a unit of intelligence you hand to the room for free, and the room is always collecting whether you notice it or not. Machiavelli wrote, "Men are so simple and so subject to present necessities that he who seeks to deceive will always find someone who will allow himself to be deceived." Let me tell you why that observation applies to every conversation you have. You are being collected from. Not maliciously, in most cases, but consistently. Every time you speak in a professional or social environment, the people around you are receiving data. Your opinions reveal your values. Your reasoning reveals your priorities. Your emotional responses reveal your triggers. Your plans reveal your direction, and each piece of data, filed quietly in the minds of the people who received it, becomes part of the picture they hold of you. A picture that determines how they position themselves relative to you in every future interaction. Most people speak freely because the speaking feels like contributing. It feels like participating. It feels like the price of admission to a social or professional dynamic that requires engagement in order to maintain standing. Machiavelli would never pay that price without calculating what the payment was buying. Here is what he would do instead. He would evaluate every potential contribution against one question. Does this serve my position, or does it only serve the conversation? If it serves the conversation without serving his position, he would hold it, because the conversation will continue without his contribution. But his position, once it has been weakened by the information he gave away, cannot be restored by taking the information back. Here is a specific example. You are in a team discussion about strategy. Your instinct says contribute your perspective immediately. Share your analysis. Show the room the quality of your thinking. Machiavelli would hold the analysis. He would let the room speak first. He would watch which perspectives are offered and how they are received. He would track which of his colleagues reveals their position early and which holds back. And by the time the discussion has moved through its first phase, he would have a complete picture of the room's landscape. Who stands where, who holds influence, what the decision maker is leaning toward, without having given the room a single piece of his own position. His contribution, when it finally arrives, will be aimed with a precision that the first-to-speak person cannot match, because the first-to-speak person was too busy contributing to collect, and the person who collected first and contributed second always holds the better hand. Let me tell you something else about this law that goes deeper than the strategic level. Every word you speak also costs you internally, not just positionally, psychologically. When you share your thinking out loud, the thinking becomes fixed. It becomes a stated position rather than a developing assessment. And a stated position is a position you now have to defend, adjust publicly, or abandon visibly, all of which cost more than the original sharing. The thinking that stays inside remains fluid. It can develop. It can adjust. It can incorporate new information without the social cost of publicly changing direction. Machiavelli understood that the prince who keeps his counsel keeps his options. The prince who shares his counsel has locked himself into the position the sharing created. Here is one more thing about this that I need you to carry into every significant room. The information you hold is not just an advantage. It is a shield. The person who has not revealed their position cannot be attacked on that position. The person who has not stated their plans cannot be outmaneuvered on those plans. The person who has not shown their cards cannot be played against those cards. Every piece of information you hold is a piece of your position that is protected from the specific forms of interference that revealed information invites. Hold more, speak less, and let the holding do the work that the speaking has been preventing. Comment, I stop giving the room my intelligence for free if this shifted how you see your next conversation. Law 2. The pause before response is worth more than the response itself, because the pause is where your power lives, and the instant response is where it dies. My friend, Machiavelli observed something about the timing of speech that most people never learn because nobody teaches it clearly. He wrote, "A wise man ought always to follow the paths beaten by great men and to imitate those who have been supreme." What the great men he studied had in common was not the content of what they said. It was the pace at which they said it. The pause, the deliberate, unhurried, composed delay between receiving a stimulus and delivering a response. That delay, which feels uncomfortable to the person practicing it and which reads as power to the person observing it, is the single most efficient way to change the room's assessment of your authority without changing a single word of what you say. When you respond instantly, you communicate that the stimulus controls your timing. The question arrived and the answer followed at the speed of reflex, rather than the speed of thought. The room registers this. Not consciously, automatically. The instant responder is categorized as reactive. The pausing responder is categorized as deliberate, and deliberate, in any environment where the room is evaluating who to trust and who to follow, outperforms reactive every single time. Most people respond instantly because the silence between the stimulus and the response feels dangerous. It feels like the room is waiting, and the waiting is a form of pressure that must be relieved through the speed of the answer. Machiavelli would never relieve that pressure. He would use it, because the silence, held for 3 to 5 seconds, does something that no amount of content can do. It communicates that this person is not being run by the conversation. This person is governing the conversation. The pace belongs to them. The timing belongs to them. And a person whose pace and timing belong to them, rather than to the pressure of the moment, is a person the room instinctively defers to. Here is your practice. In your next significant conversation, delay every response by 3 seconds. Not visibly, not as a dramatic performance of thoughtfulness. Internally, feel the impulse to respond fire and choose not to follow it immediately. Let the impulse sit for 3 seconds, and then respond from the place that the 3 seconds created. The slightly cooler, slightly more measured, slightly more precisely aimed version of the response that the instant version would never have reached. Those 3 seconds are not wasted time. They are the most efficient investment of time available in any conversation, because the 3 seconds change the response, and the changed response changes the room's assessment, and the changed assessment changes the dynamic, all from 3 seconds of held silence. Let me give you a specific scenario that will make this land. You are in a one-on-one conversation with someone who has just said something provocative, maybe a criticism of your work, maybe a challenge to a decision you made, maybe an implication that carries the specific weight of a statement that was designed to produce a fast, emotional, revealing response. Your nervous system fires. The response begins forming, and in the old version of you, the response would arrive within a half second, fully formed, emotionally charged, and carrying the specific quality of defensiveness that tells the other person exactly where the provocation landed. In the new version, the version this law is building, the response does not arrive at a half second. It arrives at 4 seconds, not because you are performing thoughtfulness, because you are practicing the discipline of holding the impulse long enough for the thinking to catch up with the feeling. And in those 4 seconds, something happens that the instant response would never have allowed. The emotional charge drops by approximately 50%. The defensive edge softens, and the response that arrives at 4 seconds is a qualitatively different response from the one that would have arrived at half a second. It is calmer, measured, more precisely aimed at the actual content of the provocation, rather than at the emotional effect the provocation produced. Machiavelli would tell you that men in general judge more by the eye than by the hand. The room sees your pace before it processes your content, and the pace, deliberate, unhurried, composed, is the thing that determines whether the content is received as authority or as reaction. Same words, different pace, completely different reception. Comment I pause before I give. Law 3. Train your eyes to track what the room's ears are ignoring. The unspoken conversation is where the real information lives. Machiavelli wrote, "One who deceives will always find those who allow themselves to be deceived." But here is what he also understood, and what most people miss entirely. The deception is almost never in the words. The words are managed. The words are prepared. The words are the version of reality that the speaker has decided to present. The truth, the unmanaged, unscripted, involuntary truth, lives in the body, in the micro-expression that contradicts the sentence, in the posture shift that reveals discomfort with the position being stated, in the eye line that moves toward a specific person at a specific moment, revealing an alliance or a dependency that the words were carefully designed to conceal. Every room you walk into has 2 conversations. The spoken one is available to everyone. The unspoken one is available only to the person who is watching rather than performing. And the unspoken conversation contains the information that actually determines outcomes. Who holds genuine authority versus who holds the title. Where the real alliances live versus where the stated alliances are. what the decision maker has already decided before the formal discussion begins. Most people track the spoken conversation with their full attention and miss the unspoken one entirely. Machiavelli would never miss the unspoken conversation. Here is what he would track. He would watch where people's eyes go when a controversial statement is made, because the eyes move toward the person whose reaction matters most to the person looking. He would watch whose body tightens when a specific topic is raised, because the tightening reveals a stake that the words are not acknowledging. He would watch who defers to whom through the specific quality of how they hold themselves relative to each other, because physical deference reveals the real hierarchy, regardless of what the organizational chart says. Here is your practice. In your next group setting, choose one person and track only their body for the duration of the interaction, not their words. Their body. Watch what their face does when someone else is speaking. Watch where their eyes go. Watch what their hands do when a specific topic is raised. At the end of the interaction, you will have a picture of that person's actual position, actual alliances, and actual concerns that their words would never have revealed. That picture is the intelligence, and here is why this intelligence is more valuable than anything the spoken conversation could provide. The spoken conversation is managed. Every person in the room is choosing their words. They are presenting the version of their thinking that serves their position. The body is not managed at that level. The body is leaking the truth that the words are carefully concealing. And the truth, gathered through the observation of the body rather than through the processing of the words, is the truth that the room does not know you hold. That asymmetry, you holding the truth while the room holds only the managed version, is the specific form of advantage that every Machiavellian strategy in this video depends on. Without the observation, the advantage does not exist. With it, the advantage is structural, invisible, and impossible to counter, because the person it is held against does not know it has been gathered, and the intelligence, gathered through observation rather than through asking, is the form of knowledge that the observed person does not know you hold, which means the knowledge is an advantage they cannot prepare against. Let me tell you why this skill is the most valuable intelligence-gathering tool available in any environment where people are managing their words. The body does not manage itself with the same sophistication that the mouth manages the words. The mouth has had years of practice at saying the appropriate thing. The body has not had the same practice at showing the appropriate thing, and the gap between what the mouth says and what the body shows is where the truth lives. Here is a specific set of signals to start tracking tomorrow. Watch the hands. When someone is comfortable with what they are saying, the hands are relaxed and open. When they are uncomfortable, when the words are not aligned with the internal state, the hands tighten, grip, fidget, or move to the face. Watch the feet. In any group conversation, a person's feet point toward the person they are most engaged with, which is not always the person they are speaking to. Watch the lean. A person who is genuinely interested leans in. A person who is mentally disengaged leans back or turns their torso slightly away, even while their face continues to show attention. Each of these signals is a data point, and data points, gathered silently across an entire conversation, produce a picture that the words alone could never construct. Machiavelli would tell you that he who wishes to foresee the future must consult the past. But he would also tell you that the past is not only in the history books, it is in the body language of the person sitting across from you right now. Their body is showing you their past responses, their current state, and their probable next move. If you are watching rather than talking, comment, "I watch the body, not the words." Law 4. Let the talkers reveal themselves. The person who speaks most in any room shows the room everything while receiving nothing in return. My friend Machiavelli made an observation that should govern how you relate to every person in your environment who talks more than they listen. He wrote, "The vulgar crowd is always taken by what a thing seems to be. Let me tell you what the talker seems to be and what they actually are. The talker seems confident, engaged, knowledgeable. The constant flow of words creates the impression of someone who has a lot to offer and is generous enough to offer it. That is what the talking seems to be. What it actually is, the most complete intelligence briefing available in any room, delivered voluntarily by the person whose position it is mapping. Every time the talker speaks, they reveal. Their opinions reveal their values. Their arguments reveal their priorities. Their stories reveal their insecurities. Their humor reveals their boundaries. Their responses to other people's contributions reveal their alliances and their rivalries. The entire picture, the complete, detailed, operationally useful picture of who this person is, what they want, what they fear, and how they can be predicted, is being handed to you for free. All you have to do is sit quietly and receive it. Most people engage with the talker on the surface level. They participate in the conversation, which means they are both giving and receiving simultaneously. Machiavelli would never engage on the surface. He would receive, quietly, completely, with the specific quality of warm, attentive, apparently engaged listening that encourages the talker to continue while providing nothing in return. Because the longer the talker talks, the more complete the picture becomes. And the more complete the picture, the more precisely any future interaction with this person can be aimed. Here is the Machiavelli contrast. The person who talks is spending. The person who listens is collecting. And at the end of any exchange where one person spent and the other collected, the collector holds the advantage. That advantage is invisible. It sits in the mind of the collector as information that the spender does not know has been gathered. And invisible advantages, as Machiavelli documented across every political case he studied, are the only advantages that cannot be countered. Because you cannot defend against what you do not know exists, and you cannot know what exists in the mind of someone who has been collecting without spending. The talker spent everything. The listener holds everything the talker spent. That is not exploitation. That is the natural consequence of the allocation of attention in any room where one person is transmitting and another person is receiving. The transmitter chose to transmit. The receiver chose to receive. And the receiver's choice, which cost nothing and produced everything, is the choice that Machiavelli would make in every single interaction where the option was available. Because you cannot defend against what you do not know exists. Let me give you a specific practice for maximizing what you gather from the talkers in your environment. The next time you are in a conversation with someone who talks significantly more than you, try this. Ask one open-ended question and then do nothing but listen for 3 full minutes. Not the performative listening where you are waiting for your turn to speak. The genuine, full-bodied, completely present listening of someone who is receiving with their entire attention. In 3 minutes of genuine listening to a talker, you will receive more operationally useful information about that person than 10 conversations of equal speaking would have produced. Because the talker, given space and an attentive audience, will move past the surface material. They will move into the territory where the real positions live, the concerns they have not fully articulated, the ambitions they have not publicly stated, the insecurities that shape their behavior without their conscious awareness. Machiavelli would tell you that the best fortress which a prince can possess is the affection of his people, but he would also tell you that the best intelligence which an observer can possess is the unguarded speech of the people he is observing. And unguarded speech is produced not by interrogation, but by silence. Silence is the space in which the other person's unguarded truth arrives. Fill the space with your own words, and the truth retreats behind the other person's managed version. Hold the space open, and the truth walks forward on its own. Comment: I collect while others spend. Law 5. Control the conversation by controlling the questions. The person who asks determines the direction. The person who answers follows it. Machiavelli wrote, "Whoever is the cause of another becoming powerful is ruined himself." Let me tell you why that observation applies directly to how questions function in every conversation you will ever have. The person who asks the question has just determined the terrain of the next 60 seconds of the exchange. The topic, the frame, the emotional register, the specific area of the other person's thinking that is now being explored. All of it was selected by the asker, and the person who answers is now operating on terrain they did not choose, exploring an area they did not select, revealing information about the specific topic the asker decided was worth investigating. The answerer thinks they are participating in a conversation. They are actually participating in a guided tour of their own position, conducted by someone who chose the route. Most people answer questions. They receive the question and respond to it at face value. Machiavelli would never just answer. He would notice the question. He would evaluate what the question was designed to produce. And he would decide whether to answer as asked, redirect the question, or respond with a question of his own that shifts the terrain back in his direction. Here is a specific scenario. A colleague asks, "What do you think about the reorganization?" That question is an invitation to reveal your position on a contested topic before you know where the asker stands. The instant answer gives the asker your position for free. The Machiavellian response is a question. What have you been hearing about it? That question does two things simultaneously. It redirects the information flow so that the asker becomes the revealer, and it gives you the data, the asker's perspective, the information they have been gathering, the position they are forming, that your answer would have given them if you had responded first. The person who asks controls the conversation. The person who answers follows. Learn to ask more and answer less. And watch how the dynamics of every significant conversation you have shift in your favor without the other person understanding why the shift occurred. Let me give you a deeper example of how this works in practice. You are in a meeting where a decision is about to be made. 3 people have stated their positions. Each one is now locked into what they said. You have said nothing. And now you ask a question. What would need to be true for the opposite direction to be the better choice? That question does not state your position. It does not reveal which direction you favor, but it does something more powerful than any statement could do. It forces the room to consider the alternative. The 3 people who stated their positions are now examining the weakness of their own positions, not because you attacked them, but because your question created the space where the examination happened naturally. Machiavelli observed that the prince who asks the right question governs the answer without ever having to state the answer himself. The question is the invisible hand. It moves the room's thinking in a direction without the room noticing that the direction was chosen for them. The asker did not argue, did not advocate, did not reveal. They simply asked. And the asking did the work that the arguing, advocating, and revealing would have done, but without any of the cost. Here is the Machiavelli proverb that should govern every significant conversation you have from this point forward. There is nothing more difficult to take in hand, more perilous to conduct, or more uncertain in its success than to take the lead in the introduction of a new order of things. But the question, the precisely aimed, carefully timed, strategically framed question, introduces the new order of things without taking the lead. It lets the room take the lead while you provide the direction. That is the most powerful form of invisible influence available. And it is available to you in every conversation starting tomorrow, not through the development of a new skill, through the reversal of an old habit, the habit of answering first and asking second. Reverse it. Ask first, answer second. And if you can manage it, answer not at all. Because the person who asks without answering holds the purest form of conversational control. They have directed the flow without entering it. They have shaped the outcome without revealing their position. They have influenced the room's conclusion without the room knowing the conclusion was influenced. That is what Machiavelli meant when he wrote that the wise ruler makes others speak and rarely speaks himself. Not because silence is impressive, because silence preserves the advantage that speaking destroys. Comment, I ask more and answer less. Halfway through this video, I want to be direct with you. Laws 1 through 5 were about gathering, building the intelligence that speaking less and observing more produces. Laws 6 and 7 are about deploying, turning that intelligence into the specific, quiet, invisible form of control that this video's title promises. Subscribe right now. Hit the notification bell. Stay, because the shift from gathering intelligence to deploying it is the shift that converts silence from a defensive posture into an offensive advantage. Machiavelli wrote that it must be considered that there is nothing more difficult to carry out, nor more doubtful of success, than to initiate a new order of things. The new order this video is building, the order where your silence is your strongest weapon and your observation is your deepest intelligence source, requires what comes next to complete the architecture. Without laws 6 and 7, the silence gathers but never deploys. With them, the gathering becomes control. Law 6. Make your rare words carry the weight of everything you held back. Precision is power. Volume is noise. Machiavelli wrote, "It is not titles that honor men, but men that honor titles." Let me tell you what that means for how your words function in any room. The words do not carry weight because they are words. They carry weight because of who is delivering them. And who is delivering them is determined not by what they say, but by how selectively they say it. The person who speaks constantly has devalued the currency of their words so thoroughly that each new statement arrives with the negligible weight of something freely and endlessly available. The person who speaks rarely has made every word an event. And events, in any room where attention is the scarcest resource, receive the quality of focus that routine contributions never access. Here is the specific mechanism. When you have been silent for most of a conversation and you finally speak, the room's attention converges. Not because you demanded it, because the contrast between your silence and your speech created a signal that the room's attention system cannot ignore. The silence was the quiet. The speech is the sound. And sound that arrives after quiet is always processed with more attention than sound that arrives in the middle of noise. That is not strategy. That is physics. And the physics of attention, once you understand it, changes how you deploy every word in every significant interaction. Most people speak to stay present in the conversation. Machiavelli would never speak to stay present. He would speak to change the direction. He would hold his contribution until the moment when the conversation needed a new direction, when the existing trajectory was stalling or circling or heading somewhere that did not serve his interest. And then he would deliver the contribution with the specific, composed, unhurried precision of someone who has been thinking while everyone else was talking. That contribution, landing in the room at the moment of maximum relevance and carrying the weight of the silence that preceded it, would redirect the entire conversation. Not through volume, through precision. And precision, delivered from silence, is the most powerful form of speech available. Here is your practice. In your next meeting, set a personal target. Make no more than 3 contributions, total, for the entire meeting. That constraint forces selectivity. It forces you to evaluate every potential contribution against the question, is this one of my 3? And the evaluation produces a quality of contribution that the unconstrained speaker can never match, because the constraint is the filter. And the filter ensures that only the most precisely aimed, most directionally significant, most strategically valuable contributions make the cut. 3 contributions, each one carrying the weight of everything you did not say. That is what precision sounds like. Let me tell you what happens in the room when your rare contribution arrives. I need you to see this clearly, because the seeing is what makes the practice sustainable through the discomfort of holding. The room has been talking for 20 minutes. Multiple people have contributed. The conversation has a pace, a direction, a specific energy that has been established by the participants. And then you speak, for the first time, and the room shifts. Not because your contribution was louder or more aggressive than the others, because the contrast between your silence and your speech created a signal that every nervous system in the room processed as significant. The room heard noise for 20 minutes, and then it heard signal. And signal, arriving after noise, is always processed with more attention, more weight, and more credibility than signal that arrives in the middle of more signal. Machiavelli would tell you that the wise man does at once what the fool does finally. But the wise man who speaks, the genuinely wise man, the one who has internalized the discipline that this entire video is building, does at the precise moment when the contribution changes the trajectory. Not before, not after, at the moment. And the moment is determined not by the content of what you have to say, but by the state of the room that will receive it. Speak when the room is ready for a new direction. Hold when the room is still processing the current one. That timing, content-independent and context-dependent, is the most advanced form of communication available. And it is available only to the person who has been watching rather than performing. Comment. I make my words an event, not a habit. Law 7. The person who sees everything and says nothing is the person who controls the room without the room knowing it is being controlled. This is the last law, and it is the one that everything else in this video has been building toward. Machiavelli wrote, "The lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten wolves. The fox, the observer, the quiet reader of the room, the person whose intelligence is gathered through silence and deployed through precision, is who this video has been building. And the fox, as Machiavelli documented with more admiration than he ever gave the lion, is the one who survives. Not because the fox is stronger, because the fox sees the trap before the trap sees the fox. Here is what control looks like when it is exercised by someone who has practiced the first 6 laws. It does not look like control. It does not announce itself. It does not arrive with the visible markers of authority or dominance that most people associate with being in charge. It looks like someone who asks the right question at the right moment, the question that shifts the conversation's direction without anyone realizing the shift was engineered. It looks like someone whose contribution arrives after enough silence that the room receives it with the full weight of its attention. It looks like someone who knows things about the room's dynamics that the room does not know they know, because the knowledge was gathered through observation, never through asking. And it looks like someone who seems, to every observer, to be simply participating in the conversation, when what they are actually doing is conducting it. That is the control, not the visible kind, the invisible kind. The kind that operates through the intelligence gathered by speaking less and observing more. The kind that requires no announcement and no display. The kind that moves the room in the direction you need it to move without the room understanding that it was moved. Because the movement was so subtle, so precisely aimed, so perfectly timed, that it felt, to every person in the room, like the natural conclusion they would have reached on their own. That is the mechanism. The control does not feel like control to the people being controlled. It feels like their own thinking. Because the observer, the person who gathered the intelligence through silence and deployed it through precision, did not argue for a conclusion. They created the conditions under which the room arrived at the conclusion independently. And conclusions that people arrive at independently are the conclusions they hold most firmly, because they feel like their own. Here is a specific example of how this works in your actual life. You want a specific outcome in a team decision. The old version of you would advocate, would argue, would make the case with the force and the evidence that your intelligence makes available. The new version, the version this video is building, does something different. You observe the room's dynamics during laws 1 through 5. You identify which concern is driving the decision-maker's thinking. You identify which frame the conversation has been operating within. And then, at the moment of maximum receptivity, you ask one question or make one observation that reframes the conversation in a way that makes the outcome you want feel like the room's natural conclusion rather than your advocacy. The room does not know it was directed. The decision-maker does not know their concern was identified and addressed through the precise aim of your contribution. Everyone in the room feels like the conclusion was collaborative. And it was collaborative, in the sense that every person participated. It was also directed, in the sense that the direction was chosen by the person who saw the most and said the least. Because the movement was so subtle, so precisely aimed, so perfectly timed, that it felt, to every person in the room, like the natural conclusion they would have reached on their own. The fact that the conclusion was the one you were building toward from the moment you walked through the door and chose silence over sound, that is the part only you need to know. Let me tell you what this kind of control produces over time. Not over a single conversation, over months and years of practice. The room begins to calibrate to you differently, not because you announced a change, because the room's nervous system has processed enough data points about who you are, the composure, the selectivity, the precision, the quality of contributions that arrive from silence and land with weight, to form an assessment that no verbal advocacy could have produced. The assessment is, this person sees things the rest of us do not. This person knows things the rest of us have not figured out. This person's silence is not absence. It is presence of a kind that deserves a different quality of attention. That assessment, formed through the room's own observation rather than through your advertisement, is the most durable form of influence available, because the room built it themselves. And what the room built, the room trusts. And what the room trusts, the room follows. Machiavelli would tell you this as the final thing in this video. He would say, the man who speaks fills the room with sound. The man who observes fills himself with intelligence. And the man who holds the intelligence, deploying it only when the deployment changes something, holding it when the holding preserves the advantage, is the man who, without the room ever quite understanding how it happened, ends up directing the outcome of every significant exchange he participates in. Not from the front of the room, from the quiet place in the room where the watching happens and where the real power has always lived. Machiavelli wrote one more thing that I need you to carry out of this video and never set down. He wrote, the wise man should always follow the roads that have been trodden by the great. And the great, every single one of them, across every field and every century, were not the loudest people in the rooms they walked into. They were the most observant. They were the most selective about when to speak and what to reveal. They were the most precisely aimed in their contributions. And they were the most comfortable with the silence that most people rush to fill, because the filling feels safer than the holding. The silence is not absence. The observation is not passivity. The control is not force. They are the three phases of a single discipline that, practiced daily, produces the specific quality of quiet influence that no amount of volume and no amount of constant speaking could ever generate. You are not becoming quieter. You are becoming more precisely powerful. And the precision, built through the daily practice of speaking less, observing more, and deploying what you have gathered with the surgical aim of someone who held the intelligence long enough to know exactly where it would land hardest, is what makes the power permanent rather than performative. That is who you are becoming now. Not the loudest person. Not the most visible. The most precisely, most deliberately, most quietly powerful person in every room you enter. Because you stopped spending what you should have been holding. And the holding, practiced daily, built the advantage that the spending was preventing. Speak less, observe more, control everything. That is the sequence. That is the architecture. And the architecture, once it is built, does not require your voice to hold it. It holds itself, through the silence that is not absence, through the observation that is not passivity, through the control that is not announced. That is Machiavelli's deepest lesson, and it is yours now. My friend, let me leave you with one final thought. Machiavelli spent 15 years as one of the most effective diplomats in Florence. He sat across the table from popes and princes and military commanders. He navigated alliances that shaped the political landscape of an entire continent. And when he looked back at everything he had observed, Every success, every failure, every moment where the outcome was determined by the behavior of the people in the room. The pattern he saw most clearly was this: the men who spoke least saw most, and the men who saw most held most. And the men who held most controlled the outcome of every significant exchange without the room ever quite understanding that the controlling was happening. That is the pattern. Speak less. Observe more. Control everything. Not through force. Through the intelligence that the silence gathered and the precision that the observation produced. That pattern has been working for 500 years. It is working right now in the rooms where the most consequential decisions of your life are being made. And the person in those rooms who is practicing it, whether they have read Machiavelli or not, is the person who is holding the outcome while everyone else is still talking. Like this video, if any of these 7 laws gave you a specific tool for converting your silence into the most powerful form of influence available. Share it with someone you know who is still giving the room everything for free through the habit of speaking first and holding nothing. And subscribe to this channel because the next video goes directly into the specific moments where these 7 laws get tested most severely. The high-pressure situations where the old instinct to speak fires hardest and where the discipline to hold changes everything.